Chapter 1. The Planned Encounter. The Grand Ballroom that night shimmered in gold, exactly as Lesslyn had imagined untouchable luxury would look. However, her focus wasn't on the crystal chandeliers or the golden pillars, but on the man standing in the center of the crowd, Xavier Valerius. The young CEO, with his sharp jawline and ice-cold gaze, was the man Lesslyn had secretly loved for 3 years. To her, Xavier was a star far too distant to reach. Lesslyn took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart when Xavier suddenly turned. Their eyes met. It was sharp, intense, as if time itself had stopped. "You're 5 minutes late, Lesslyn," Xavier's deep voice broke her reverie. As he approached, his masculine scent, a blend of sandalwood and expensive citrus, instantly overwhelmed her senses. "Forgive me, sir. There was a slight issue with the dress," Lesslyn whispered nervously. Xavier didn't respond with anger. His eyes swept over her appearance from head to toe. Though his expression remained stoic, his hand moved impulsively, brushing a stray lock of hair from her shoulder. The touch felt like fire against Lesslyn's skin. "Tomorrow, come to my office at 8 in the morning. There are design files that need immediate revision," Xavier stated coldly. Lesslyn frowned. "But sir, wasn't that revision scheduled for next week?" Xavier went silent for a moment. The sharpness in his eyes softened slightly, but he quickly looked away. "I don't like waiting. And make sure you eat breakfast before you come. I hate working with people who lack energy." Lesslyn didn't know that, behind that indifferent facade, Xavier had just canceled 3 important meetings just to have an excuse to see her tomorrow. He had been watching her for a long time, harboring feelings far deeper than she could ever imagine. To him, every trivial reason was an opportunity to be near the only woman who had stolen his heart. That night, under the glow of the chandeliers, a sweet and calculated game of love had just begun. Chapter 2. Breakfast on the 65th floor, 07:50 a.m. Lesslyn stood before the double doors of dark oak leading to Xavier Valerius's office. She smoothed her black pencil skirt and ensured there were no wrinkles in her cream silk blouse. Her heart was thumping, not out of fear of deadlines, but because the memory of Xavier's fingers brushing her hair last night still felt hauntingly real. As she pushed the doors open, the strong aroma of coffee and peppermint greeted her. Xavier was already there, sitting behind a massive glass desk with his white shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing a luxury watch on his sturdy wrist. "You're on time," Xavier said without looking up from the tablet in his hand. "I didn't dare be late after your warning last night, sir," Lesslyn replied formally. She set her bag down, preparing to take out her notes. However, before she could open her folder, Xavier slid an elegant paper box and a warm latte toward the empty side of the desk. "Eat," he commanded briefly. Lesslyn blinked in confusion. "But I managed to have some toast at home." "I won't take no for an answer, Lesslyn. It's from the bakery that just opened downstairs. They say the taste is decent, and I don't like seeing my employees faint while reviewing complex design revisions." Lesslyn was stunned. She knew that bakery, a legendary spot where the line wrapped around 2 blocks every morning. There was no way Xavier had stood in line himself. It meant he had specifically ordered his personal secretary, or perhaps even gone out of his way, to ensure she had breakfast. Half an hour passed in intense silence. Lesslyn began focusing on the design drafts for the Valerius landmark project on the large monitor. Suddenly, she felt a dark shadow loom over her. Xavier was standing behind her chair, leaning in to look at the screen. One hand rested on the back of Lesslyn's chair, while the other pointed to a corner of the design. "This part," Xavier whispered. His deep voice vibrated right next to Leslyn's ear. "The lines are too rigid. I want something more organic, like the dress you wore last night." Lesslyn held her breath. This position allowed her to smell his intoxicating masculine scent. If she turned even an inch, their faces would touch. Yes, sir. I will adjust the curves," Lesslyn stammered, her voice barely audible. Xavier didn't pull away immediately. His eyes were no longer on the screen, but on Leslyn's reflection in the monitor. There was a flash of protectiveness and adoration that he hid masterfully behind his sharp gaze. "Lesslyn," Xavier called softly, this time using a gentler tone, almost like a private whisper. "Yes, sir?" "From now on, you will work from this room. I've already asked the operations team to move your desk here. This project is too important to be handled from the lower departments." Leslyn's eyes widened. "But that will start rumors in the office." Xavier finally pulled back, returning to his executive chair with a very faint, thin smile, the kind of smile he reserved only for her. "Let them talk. I own this building, and I decide who deserves to be near me." Under the desk, Xavier's hand was clenched tight. He didn't actually care about the design revisions. He simply couldn't stand the thought of Lesslyn working downstairs, where other men could stare at her freely. Tonight, he had already planned another reason to keep her even longer. Chapter 3. The curtains open. That morning, the atmosphere at the Valerius Group headquarters felt more tense than usual. Lesslyn had just finished arranging her new desk, situated right in the corner of Xavier's vast office. The distance between them was only a few meters, creating an atmosphere that was both intimate and intimidating. It wasn't Xavier who entered, but a woman in a fire-red couture gown with a pungent scent of rose perfume. Isabella Van Doren, the daughter of the Valerius Group's largest business partner and the woman rumored to be Xavier's fiancé-to-be. "Where is Xavier?" Isabella asked dismissively, her eyes narrowing at Lesslyn. "And who are you? Why is there an extra desk in my future husband's private office?" Lesslyn stood up awkwardly. "I am Lesslyn, the project designer." "Oh, so you're the staff everyone is talking about?" Isabella stepped closer, scanning Lesslyn from head to toe. "Xavier has always been pitying toward the lower class, but putting you here, he must be feeling exceptionally charitable." Just then, Xavier walked in. His face, usually neutral, immediately hardened upon seeing Isabella standing in front of Leslyn's desk. Without greeting Isabella, Xavier walked past her and stood beside Lesslyn, implicitly showing whom he was protecting. "Isabella, I don't recall having a scheduled meeting with you today." Xavier's voice was cold and sharp. "Xavier, darling, my father said we should discuss the investment in Milan." Isabella tried to touch Xavier's arm, but he avoided her with a smooth movement to check the files on Leslyn's desk. Chapter 4. Threatened Brilliance. L'Aurore restaurant was located on the top floor of a skyscraper, with glass walls revealing the twinkling lights of New York City like a bed of diamonds. The atmosphere was incredibly private, with only a few tables occupied, and piano music playing softly in the background. Lesslyn wore a simple black silk dress that accentuated her elegance. Across from her, Xavier appeared remarkably relaxed, though his gaze remained intense. "You haven't touched your risotto," Xavier noted, breaking the silence. "Are you still thinking about what Isabella said this afternoon?" Lesslyn set her fork down. "Sir, she is the daughter of the Van Doren Group. Offending her to defend a common staff member like me, won't that negatively impact Valerius Group's shares?" Xavier set his wine glass down gently, but the clink was firm. "Listen, Lesslyn. Valerius Group became great because of quality, not because I bow to the ego of a spoiled woman. And one more thing," he paused, locking eyes with her. "You are not just a common staff member to me." The intimate moment was shattered by the sharp click of high heels approaching their table. Unexpectedly, Isabella appeared with several of her socialite friends. Apparently, she had followed them to humiliate Lesslyn in public. "Oh, look who's doing business research here," Isabella sneered with a forced laugh. Her friends began to whisper, eyeing Lesslyn with disdain. Isabella stood right beside their table, looking at Lesslyn with disgust. "A shame, Xavier. A place of this caliber has to be tainted by the presence of someone who probably can't even spell the menu items without your help." One of Isabella's friends chimed in. "Xavier, I heard your father already agreed to announce your engagement at the company's anniversary party next month. Aren't you afraid? Rumors about this office girl will ruin your image." Xavier's face turned deathly cold, the kind of cold that made the entire room feel frozen. He stood up slowly, forcing Isabella to step back from his sheer physical intimidation. "Engagement?" Xavier scoffed. "I have never agreed to any contract involving my feelings, especially with someone who lacks basic ethics." Xavier then turned to a waiter, who arrived instantly. "Starting tonight, blacklist Isabella Van Doren and her entire group from all assets owned by the Valerius Group. They are banned from entering my buildings, hotels, and restaurants," Xavier said in a calm but lethal tone. "Xavier, you can't do this to me," Isabella screamed hysterically. "I just did," Xavier replied shortly. He then turned to Lesslyn, extending his hand gently in front of everyone. "Let's go, Lesslyn. I've lost my appetite seeing trash in this room." Inside the quiet limousine on the way home, Lesslyn was still trembling. She never imagined Xavier would go to such lengths for her. "Sir, you really didn't have to do that." "I did it because I wanted to, Lesslyn," Xavier interrupted. He moved closer, narrowing the gap between them in the spacious back seat. "And stop calling me sir when it's just the two of us. It makes me feel like a stranger to you." Xavier took Lesslyn's hand, stroking the back of it with his thumb. "I've been waiting for you to realize it for 4 years. Don't let people like Isabella make you doubt yourself again." Lesslyn was stunned, so that old ID card of hers had been kept as a reminder on purpose. Under the dim streetlights, Xavier's face looked sincere, a side of him he had never shown to the world. Chapter 5. Behind the Black Gates. The next morning, the atmosphere at the headquarters was noticeably quieter. No one dared to meet Lesslyn's eyes, but everyone knew. Lesslyn's position was no longer just that of an employee. She was Xavier's newly revealed weakness and strength, all at once. "Today there is a meeting with the lead architect at my residence," Xavier said, closing his laptop at exactly 4 in the afternoon. "We are heading there directly." Lesslyn blinked. "Your residence, sir? I mean, Xavier? Couldn't the drafts be reviewed here at the office?" Xavier stood up, adjusting his suit buttons with a practiced, masculine grace. "It's quieter there, and I want you to see the materials we'll be using for the main lobby in person. Let's go." The black Rolls-Royce whisked them away to a modern mansion hidden behind a private pine forest. The building was a masterpiece of glass and steel, featuring an infinity pool that seemed to merge with the horizon. However, what left Lesslyn speechless wasn't the luxury, but a room in the right wing of the mansion. Through the glass walls, she could see a fully equipped design studio. There, neatly organized, were all of Lesslyn's design works, ranging from her college days to her most recent projects. "You've collected all of my work?" Lesslyn whispered in disbelief. Xavier stood behind her, hands tucked into his pockets. "I don't just like you, Lesslyn. I admire your mind. Every line you draw has a soul. I wanted to ensure that soul stayed safe under my watch." Instead of jumping into business, Xavier led Lesslyn to a spacious, open kitchen, where fresh ingredients were already laid out. "I heard you like pasta aglio e olio with extra chili," Xavier said as he tied on an apron. "Sit down, let me cook." Lesslyn was floored. The CEO of Valerius, feared by the business world, was now expertly mincing garlic. "You even know small details like that?" "I told you I've been watching you for 4 years, Xavier replied without looking up, though the tips of his ears turned slightly red, a rare sight that made Lesslyn's heart race. "I don't want you feeling stressed because of the Isabella incident. Here, you're just Lesslyn, and I'm just Xavier." The warm atmosphere shattered when Leslyn's phone, lying on the counter, vibrated violently. A name flashed on the screen. Julian. Upon seeing the name, Xavier's soft expression vanished instantly. His eyes darkened, emitting a cold, predatory aura. He recognized the name, Leslyn's ex-boyfriend from college, who had once left her in tears for days. "Don't answer it," Xavier said, his voice now low and heavy with command. "But he hasn't reached out in so long." Xavier set his knife down and stepped closer, pinning Lesslyn between the kitchen counter and his towering frame. His masculine scent and body heat made it difficult for her to breathe. "I got rid of one nuisance yesterday. Xavier whispered inches from her lips. Don't force me to do something even more extreme to the man who once hurt you, Lesslyn. You are here with me, now, forever. Chapter 6. Protection and Possession. That morning, the peace of the Valerius Group's executive floor was shattered when Julian, Lesslyn's ex, brazenly forced his way in. With a face full of unearned confidence, he stood before Lesslyn's desk, ignoring the sharp glares from the staff. Lesslyn, I know I messed up. Give me one chance to explain, Julian pleaded, reaching out to grab her hand. Lesslyn froze. The trauma of the past left her rooted to the spot. But before Julian's fingers could touch her skin, a powerful hand clamped around his wrist with bone-crushing force. Xavier emerged from his office, his aura so dark and intimidating that the room's temperature seemed to plummet. Who gave you permission to touch what is mine? Xavier's voice was low, vibrating with suppressed rage. Julian tried to protest. This is our private business, sir! Xavier let out a cold, dark chuckle, pulling Lesslyn behind him into a possessive embrace. Your business with her died 4 years ago. Now every strand of her hair is my responsibility. Without wasting a second, Xavier signaled his security team. Drag this man out. Blacklist his face from every Valerius property permanently. If he approaches her again, ensure he can never walk again. Once Julian was dragged away, Xavier turned back. He gently cupped Lesslyn's still trembling face. Never look at another man with that much fear again, Lesslyn. In front of me, you are only allowed to feel safe and loved. Chapter 7. The Invisible Crown. The night of the Valerius Group anniversary party arrived. The Grand Ballroom of the 6-star hotel was packed with tycoons, officials, and the blinding flashes of cameras. Lesslyn stood in a corner, wearing a midnight blue silk gown that shimmered like the night sky. She looked beautiful, yet she felt like a smudge on a golden canvas. Xavier stepped onto the stage. The spotlight followed his every authoritative move. After a brief speech about the company's success, his voice shifted to something deeper and more personal. Tonight, I also want to introduce someone who has been the center of every personal success of mine lately, Xavier said, his eyes searching for Lesslyn in the crowd. Lesslyn, come here. Every eye turned to her. Sharp whispers began to ripple through the room about her common origins, the scandal with Julian, and the assumption that she was just a temporary distraction. With trembling hands and a face flushed with embarrassment, Lesslyn ascended the stage. Xavier took her hand, gripping it so tightly as if he would never let her fall. From this day forward, Lesslyn is not only our lead project designer. She is my fiancée, and anyone who does not respect her does not respect the Valerius Group. After the hollow cheers subsided, Lesslyn fled to the outdoor balcony. The night wind swept away the tears that finally fell. She felt suffocated. The shame of feeling unworthy of standing beside a king, like Xavier, weighed heavily on her chest. Why are you crying? Xavier's voice sounded softly behind her. I'm ashamed, Xavier, Lesslyn sobbed without turning around. Look at them. They look at me like I'm a thief who broke into your palace. I'm just an ordinary person. I have nothing to give you but messy design drafts. Xavier gently turned her around. He pulled her close, resting their foreheads together. Under the moonlight, Xavier's gaze looked pained at the sight of her sadness. Do you know what the saddest part is? Xavier whispered, his voice hoarse. In the 4 years I've been watching you, I always felt like I was the one who wasn't worthy of you. I have everything, but my life was empty and cold. You came in with your sincerity and made me feel alive again. Xavier wiped the tears from her cheeks with his thumb. Don't be ashamed of loving me, Lesslyn. Be ashamed for those who have everything, but have no heart like yours. If the world becomes too heavy for you, look to me. I will be the wall that blocks all those insults, even if I have to fight the whole world. He then kissed her forehead, a long and reverent kiss, one that wasn't about lust, but a promise of eternal protection. That night, amidst the cold grandeur, Lesslyn realized that her love was no longer a secret, and she no longer had to hide. Chapter 8. The Old King and the Buried Secret. The morning after the announcement party was anything but peaceful. Lesslyn woke up in one of the guest rooms of Xavier's mansion with a whirlwind of emotions. However, her calm was shattered when she went downstairs and found a silver-haired man sitting in Xavier's high-backed chair in the dining room. The man was Arthur Valerius, Xavier's father, known as the Iron Hand of the corporate world. He stared at Lesslyn with a gaze sharper and colder than Xavier's. "So this is the woman making my son gamble the stability of the Valerius Group's shares?" Arthur's voice was heavy and commanding. "Good morning, Mr. Valerius. I know who you are," Arthur interrupted. He placed a brown folder on the table. "I'm not interested in romantic dramas. I'm here to give you a choice. 10 billion won and a one-way ticket to London, or you will watch Xavier lose everything for the sake of keeping you." Before Lesslyn could respond, firm footsteps echoed through the hall. Xavier entered with an aura capable of crushing his father's dominance. He stood beside Lesslyn, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "You're wasting your time, father," Xavier said coldly. "Your money won't work on her. And my position in this company wasn't a gift from you. It was built by my own sweat. Don't ever threaten her again." Arthur let out a cynical chuckle. "You adore her so much, Xavier. But does she know that your accidental encounter 4 years ago was your own design? Does she know who actually paid for her mother's entire hospital bill anonymously, just so she would feel indebted to fate?" Lesslyn froze. Her world felt like it was spinning. All this time, she had thought her mother's recovery and the mysterious scholarship she received in college were miracles. "Xavier," Lesslyn whispered, her voice trembling. "What does he mean?" Xavier went silent, his jaw tightening. He didn't look at his father. Instead, he looked at Lesslyn, with eyes full of regret and naked honesty. "I did it because you were about to give up, Lesslyn," Xavier said softly. "I saw you in the library that day, crying because you couldn't pay the medical bills. I couldn't let your light go out. Yes, I arranged everything so you could reach this point, so you could stand before me again." Chapter 9. The Fall of the Valerius Throne. Lesslyn ran out of the mansion, ignoring the shouts of the servants and the sudden thunderstorm drenching the city. She felt suffocated. Every kindness Xavier had shown now felt like a golden chain binding her. Inside the mansion, Valerius smiled with satisfaction. "She's gone, Xavier. Now, get back to the boardroom. The board of directors is waiting for you to sign the inheritance pact, or you lose your voting rights today." But Xavier didn't move toward the boardroom. He tore off his tie, threw his expensive blazer onto the floor, and looked at his father with a gaze Arthur had never seen before. The look of a man who no longer feared losing his fortune. "Take all your wealth, father. Take the company." "Take my name," Xavier said icily. "Without Lesslyn, all of this is just a pile of trash." Xavier ran out, plunging into the heavy rain without an umbrella. On a dark walkway, he found Lesslyn sitting weakly under a dim streetlight, her body shivering from the cold and a broken heart. "Go away, Xavier! What else do you want to orchestrate?" Lesslyn screamed over the roar of the rain. "Did you also arrange for this rain to fall so you could act the part of the hero?" Xavier knelt in front of her, uncaring, that his expensive clothes were now ruined by mud. He gripped Leslyn's shoulders, forcing her to see the truth in his eyes. "I'm insane, Lesslyn. I became obsessed because I didn't know any other way to love someone without the fear of losing them." His voice was hoarse, competing with the thunder. "I resigned as CEO today. I threw away the Valerius inheritance. I have nothing left now. I'm just an ordinary man begging you not to leave." Lesslyn was stunned. "You threw it all away? If all that help made you feel burdened, then let me start from zero with you. No money, no power. Just me, Xavier, who loves you to death," Xavier whispered. Without waiting for an answer, Xavier pulled Lesslyn into his arms. He cupped her face, wet with rain and tears, and crashed his lips onto hers in an intense, desperate kiss. The kiss felt like fire in the middle of the storm. There was a hunger suppressed for 4 years, a fear of loss, and a promise stronger than any legal document. Lesslyn tried to push him away at first, but slowly her hands crept up to Xavier's neck, returning the kiss with equal intensity. Under the violent downpour on a deserted street, the king had stepped down from his throne for one woman. In that moment, Lesslyn knew Xavier might be a mad manipulator, but his heart belonged entirely to her. Chapter 10. A Sealed Destiny. That night, the storm outside no longer mattered. Inside Xavier's private penthouse, hidden from the chaos of the corporate world, the atmosphere was warm and heavy, with a sweet tension. Xavier had let go of everything: the expensive suits, the power, and the Valerius name, only to stand before Lesslyn as a man stripped bare by honesty. The city lights behind the giant glass walls looked like grains of gold dust, but Xavier's attention was only on Lesslyn. Their wet clothes had been replaced by light silk robes. Xavier approached, his trembling fingers gently brushing through Leslyn's damp hair. "I don't need the world, Lesslyn," Xavier whispered, his voice hoarse and full of restrained passion. "My world starts where you stand and ends in your embrace." Lesslyn looked into his eyes that were once cold as ice, now burning with pure adoration. She no longer saw a manipulative CEO, but a man willing to be destroyed just to keep her whole. Xavier pulled Lesslyn into his arms, bringing their bodies together without an inch of space. His touch this time was no longer a command, but a plea. He kissed her neck softly, sending a burning sensation through her nerves. Every inch of skin that touched seemed to ignite a fire they had long extinguished for the sake of professionalism. "Tell me you're mine," Xavier demanded softly between his increasingly hungry kisses. "Tell me that after all this madness, you will never let me go." Lesslyn looked up, meeting his gaze with newfound courage. She wrapped her arms around Xavier's neck, pulling him closer until their breaths merged. "I am yours, Xavier. Not because of your script, but because my heart has nowhere else to call home." On the vast bed, under the dim glow of the crystal lamps, they celebrated the victory of their love. Xavier's kisses felt like a promise, hot, intense, and eternal. There were no more secrets, no more business contracts. There were only two souls who had finally found their harbor after a long storm. Xavier held Lesslyn tightly as dawn began to break, whispering words of love intended only for those 4 walls to hear. The king had indeed descended from his throne, but in Leslyn's heart he had just been crowned the true owner of her happiness. They had won the most dangerous game of all, the unconquerable game of the heart.